Hi, and welcome to another edition of Studio 411. I'm your host, Larry De Silva, and we've got a guest joining us today from out on the West Coast, out in California, Gretchen Bonaduce, author, reality star, musician, singer. She does a little bit of everything and everything quite well. Those of you who say, well, the name sounds familiar, well, Gretchen came onto the scene in the early 2000s on television anyway, starring in Breaking Bonaduce. It was a VH1 reality show along with her then husband, former Partridge Family star, now ex-husband, Danny Bonaduce. She has written not only about that, but the nearly 18 years of marriage and 2 children and her escapades in a book entitled Surviving Agent Orange. I just, every time I say that, I could be in the car and I just laugh. I think it's a great title. And other things I learned from being thrown under the Partridge Family bus. And that's published by, she's laughing at it, and she wrote the book. Gretchen Bonaduce, welcome to Studio 411. How are you tonight?
Thank you, Larry. I'm doing great, and I'm just so excited to get to talk to you.
Very good, very good. Now tell me, standard question for authors, what at this point in time inspired you to write the book?
Money, and it was a big one.
That's about as honest an answer as we've ever gotten. Good for you, good for you.
Well, yes, money, but also I wanted to tell my story. My ex-husband has had many TV shows, many radio shows. He's been able to put me out there in any way he kind of wanted to, and I wanted to represent myself. And so that was the biggest motivation for me, actually, is, you know, I wanted people to form their opinion about me by actually reading what I had to say.
Now, in the book, I mean, there's a lot of different themes. The two that, or 2 or 3 that came to my mind was don't stay in a bad marriage, long-suffering spouse, and I have some thoughts on that. AD after Danny, or BD before Danny, I guess, a little bit, and then lessons are the, let me get that, I can't even read my notes. Lessons are on the hard knocks and the pain. So again, obviously you were a survivor, to say the least. Tell me again, long-suffering spouse, I think it's just a female trait, and perhaps a male trait as well. I think that whether there are children or not involved, I think we all try to make good of a maybe not perfect situation.
Well, I think everybody wants their marriage to work. You know, I worked really hard in a really bad situation to try to keep things together. And I think also, and I totally believe this, and I write this in the book, that he probably made me a way better person than I actually am. I mean, he had me on such a pedestal, and I'm not going to lie, I kind of liked being the saint. You know, he definitely introduced me that way. Whenever people would address me, they would be like, oh my God, you're such a saint. And, you know, I kind of like that. I like that. And I also feel like it did make me a way better person than I actually am, because I didn't want to disappoint him by doing something that would make me look bad ever, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Now, since you brought that up, he introduced you many times as, oh, the saint, this, that. Do you think that was certainly a compliment, but do you think that was also perhaps that he looked at himself as not a saint?
Absolutely. Definitely he didn't have the greatest self-esteem. I know that he knew he wasn't a good person, and we would have conversations near the end, you know, when I was going to divorce him, and I would be, I just don't really understand how you would present me in this way, yet what you were doing behind my back. You know, it was very weird. On every radio station, he would talk about me and in the best terms and how great I was and the nicest person, and I would never lie and all these things. And I think it was probably his guilt in a way that was, you know, kind of putting me out there like that.
You write in the book the longest full-time job that you ever had was keeping your husband off drugs. So that's certainly a tall order, to say the least.
Yeah, he had a lot of issues, which I believe had to do with being a child star, a lot of it. And then he also didn't have the greatest upbringing. He had a really volatile relationship with his dad. So I think those two combined, the poor guy just didn't have a chance, you know. I think you suspend emotionally wherever you become famous. I totally believe that. And he became one of the most famous child stars in the world at age 10, you know. So I think he was very immature. He had everything he wanted at his feet. You know, that show was one of the most popular shows in the 1970s.
And for those of you, again, who might not remember, again, co-stars that Danny had, Shirley Jones, Oscar-winning actress, well-known singer, songwriter, actor, the late David Cassidy, Susan Day, who you might remember from Law and Order, and the rest of the clan there on the successful show of the early to mid-70s, The Partridge Family. We'll get back to that in a little bit. And also one other thing too is Danny's dad was a gentleman that I remember seeing the credits and I used to think, oh, I wonder if he's related. You might remember shows like Dick Van Dyke, One Day at a Time. His dad was a comedy writer, among other things, Joseph Bonaduce. So that's in case you see that, then you'll make the connection. Tell me, how did? I'm sorry.
I said he was a very big writer, and I'm sure that caused a lot of the conflict with Danny as well, because, you know, he was out earning his dad and he was famous and his dad was the serious writer, and, you know, Danny was getting all the attention, and I'm sure that was difficult for his father.
Good point. And again, I'm not either, with talking to Danny or his dad has since passed on, but usually I would think it works the other way around. I know, like, again, from a male perspective, but again, it is possible. But again, his dad certainly, didn't have anything to be ashamed of. He was a very, very good writer. And Danny, for those 5 or 6 years, and then kind of things quieted down. And then during the time you guys were together, he kind of started to skyrocket again as kind of, what is it, the child star gone bad. That seemed to be a syndrome that the media loves to gobble up.
Yeah, and that turned out to be a blessing in disguise, because it was that era when all of them were going bad. It was the ex-child star gone wrong, and it was on every single TV show, Oprah and Maury and Geraldo. So it ended up helping us get by, because when Danny got arrested in Phoenix, he lost his job there. And so we didn't have any income, and the only way that we were getting by was everybody was doing this ex-child star gone wrong show.
Tell me, how did you guys meet? I had a guest on recently who fell in love with the gentleman that they got involved with, not married, but involved with for a significant amount of time, in about a half an hour. You guys actually kind of beat that record in my book, because you actually got married within what, a couple of days, a week at best?
Oh, it was a couple days, yeah. The Star magazine put out an article that said, Danny Bonaduce marries blonde after 8-hour courtship. That wasn't exactly true, but it was very fast. I would say 48 hours, 60 hours, we got married. And I think he was very lost, and so was I, and it seemed like a good idea at the time. And we made it 18 years, so I kind of feel like any reason to marry someone is as good as the next, because 50% of them don't work out anyway, and no one in a million years thought we would work out. 18 years after the amount of time we knew each other was unbelievable, that we were able to do that.
Now, what was it about him that attracted you to him during the first few hours that you spent with him?
He was really fun and very smart and very funny, and yeah, that appealed to me. He was just the sweetest guy. He showed up at my house, and I had made dinner, and he had champagne and flowers, and he just was very charming.
Tell the story. I found it pretty humorous, if you can recall from the book. There was a story about what a psychic told Danny. Do you recall that?
Yeah, that's actually how we did meet. I was working for a production company, and the guy would put on different things, like psychic fairs, baseball card fairs, just all kinds of things. And that week, it was my job to get psychics on radio shows, because he was doing a psychic fair. And so I booked a psychic on Danny's show. And I mentioned to her, I was like, oh my God, he seems so fun and cool. Hopefully I'll get to meet him. So I guess that night she was at an appearance that he was at. He was hosting like a haunted house or something. And she said, oh, let me read your palm. So he put out his hand and she was like, oh my God, you're going to get married really soon. He goes, I am. And she goes, yeah, to this girl with like all this hair, and she's really, really, really skinny. Well, that description fit the girl he was dating at the time. And so he goes, oh, well, what's her name? And the psychic goes, oh, her name's Gretchen. He goes, Gretchen? I don't know any Gretchens. And so the next day when he went into work, I was calling to make sure, the psychic was booked and everything was fine with that. And he saw the message. He said, Gretchen, give me that message. And then took it and called me. So it was very funny. And, maybe she did know. I thought it was just a joke, but, maybe she knew.
Now we know. We know. I was going to say, Danny could always say, well, I know to blame the psychic, but no, not at all. November 4th. November 4th, 1990 was the big day. Now, the other thing that, again, and these things, they're almost too unbelievable. I know you guys did the reality show, but I got to tell you, there's some bits in this book that literally you could write scripts for a sitcom. I'll give you one. You get married, you guys, instantly get, involved as a couple, despite having a fiance who contacted Howard Stern. I mean, this is like, this is like beyond belief. He had a fiance that he forgot to, tell anybody about.
Yes. It was just so absurd and bizarre. I mean, that's why I want to pitch it as a movie, because I kind of see it like a real Bridget Jones' Diary meets I, Tonya, because the situations that I was in were so absurd, and it's all true. It's crazy.
There's so many. I'll try to get to a couple of others without ruining the book, but I think it's great. You mentioned something, and I'll jump to this. Who will play you and Danny in the movie version of the book?
That is such a tough one. I love Emma Stone, of course. She's adorable. And I'll tell you a story about her. I met her probably, it's got to be 22 years ago, maybe. VH1 did a show called In Search of the Partridge Family, and they were looking for another Partridge family. So they did like a whole not worldwide, but United States search, where they went to Orlando and New York City and LA and Vegas, and they were looking for a new David, a new Shirley, a new Lori. And the girl that ended up winning it was Emma Stone. She won Lori Partridge. And I looked at her and I just knew it. I said, do you know what's about to happen to you? You are spectacular. You're going to be humongous. And now look at she is. She's amazing. So I would love her. I also love, oh my gosh, she's the girl from the Scary Movies, the blonde. She was married to Chris Pratt. Do you know what actress I'm talking about? Oh, she's very funny.
Oh, Anna Faris? No.
Anna Faris, yeah.
It is. Oh, that plays on Mom. Yeah, there you go. She was married to Chris Pratt? Oh, okay.
Yeah, they were married.
Spoiler alert, folks.
And Danny, I don't even know. Like, maybe Joaquin Phoenix could pull it off.
It would have to be somebody that, like, could really, like, get into the character. Kind of like the way the guy that morphed into the Joker on Batman, that just like totally embraced the character. But yeah, from a physical and look standpoint, I don't know, that's a tough one. But yeah, but no, Emma Stone, I like that one. Gretchen Bonaduce joining us here for the hour on Studio 411, the book Surviving Agent Orange, published by Rare Bird Books. For more information, www.rarebirdbooks.com. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing. I know you grew up in Middle America.
Well, I'm from Chicago originally, but I grew up, I moved around a lot when I was a kid. I lived in Illinois, I lived in Germany, I lived in Tennessee, then I moved to Phoenix, then I moved to San Francisco. So I just have moved my whole life, which actually worked out really great for me when Danny and I got married, because when you're in radio, you just have to go where the job is. So we moved quite a bit, and it really didn't bother me because I grew up that way, moving all over the place. Grew up in a super religious, very Southern Baptist, super strict household, which knowing me was probably a good thing. So,
Well, I was going to say it did kind of give you some pause, perhaps sometimes when you might have made the wrong decisions.
definitely. I mean, my parents really held me accountable. And that was one of the funny things. People asked me after Danny and I got married, they're like, well, what did your parents say? And, of course, neither of our parents were that thrilled that we were marrying people that we didn't know. But I go, I don't know. Let me ask my dad. So I was like, hey, Dad, what did you think? He goes, well, you've always been the kind that was going to do what you were going to do anyway. So I guess it didn't really surprise me that much.
No.
And that surprised me that my dad said that.
More specifically, Gretchen grew up, or rather was born in Waukegan, Illinois. And then I remembered Waukegan, and growing up, I always knew, my goodness, do you know who their most famous citizen to be born in Waukegan is? Or was?
I do, but is it Benny Goodman?
Well, the first name was right if you use it in a different form.
Oh, I can't remember, but I know there's some big guy.
Yes, Jack Benny was probably
Jack
the most
Benny.
famous person that came out of Waukegan, Illinois. And then a couple of others that I won't quiz you on because these I don't think you'll get. The very famous science fiction writer Ray Bradbury was born in Waukegan. And a gentleman that I had the pleasure to speak to, oh my goodness, many years ago, about 35 years ago, when I was producing a sports talk show, the Hall of Fame quarterback who was also a coach here at the Coast Guard Academy for many years, the late Otto Graham. So three big heavyweights, and now we've added a fourth with you. They'll have a kind of a giant thing carved out of stone with the four of you on there someday. So that's good. Good to hear.
Well, I hear they have a Walk of Fame there, so I would like my star. I hear they have one, so they need to add me.
Now,
I'm never going to get one here in Hollywood.
Another story that's just classic was you actually on purpose staged an event at the mid-90s Emmy Awards where you dressed in such a ridiculous outfit, or so the book conveys this, that you actually were selected as one of the worst dressed people at the Emmys, you and Danny both. So I can't wait. I have to dig up a picture of that. We'll have to see if we have that.
There is one. Someone just sent it to me. So Danny, I think, was by accident, but I did it on purpose because I knew unless you're a nominee, you really can't win. They really only give it to the people who are nominated. And since we were never going to be nominated for an Emmy because our show was just too brutal, I decided to make a beautiful dress, but make it sort of a clowny pattern. So it was sort of purple and blue and green. And I loved it, but yeah, I knew it was probably going to be voted in a thumbs down, and it was.
That was before. Was there like a Joan Rivers, Melissa Rivers fashion police like at those awards? You know how they used to always interview people? You would have thought they would have.
It had to be before then, because otherwise we'd have got killed.
They would have stopped you for sure and said, "Oh, you got to get on stage with this." I love it. What was the first incident with Danny that made you think, many years later, perhaps when you were writing the book, maybe I should have got out?
God, that is such a hard question because I feel like I left when I was ready to go, but I feel like for my children, maybe I should have left sooner. So, it's always kind of weighing. Do you want to make your children a product of divorce? Do you want to, do you want them to stay in this abusive relationship? And not that he was physically abusive at all, but he was very emotionally, verbally. The thing that made me actually go was I was watching Dr. Phil one day. And Dr. Phil said, children would rather be from a bad situation than in one. And I was like, oh my God, I'm keeping my children in a bad situation. And that was the thing that I needed to hear to make me to go, because I didn't want to keep my kids in a situation that they had no control over. I'm an adult. I was making my own choice to stay and keep trying to work things out. But eventually I had to put them first. And that's what I had to do.
But now the question really was before the kids came along. In other words, during those first few weeks, days, months, was there something that you look back and you say, gee, this was like a precursor of what was to come?
Probably all of it. Probably all of it.
Oh my goodness.
I always had my suspicions that he wasn't being faithful to me, but I never could catch him up until you had cell phones and computers. I would always get the term, I think it's called gaslighting, where I would think something was happening and I would try to confront him about it, and he would be like, oh no, you're crazy, I would never do that to you. And then I started thinking, oh my God, maybe I'm crazy,
Yeah.
And then when I was able to actually catch him, and what I would do is I would pretend to be him on his phone, and that's how I caught him.
A true story is someone that I kind of lost touch with and have sort of reconnected. You know how you kind of reconnect sometimes with people through social media. They were writing kind of a rant, a well-written rant, we'll call it, on social media, and talk about the gaslighting thing. Their experience with the now ex-husband, who of course drained everything out of the bank account before he left, was that at one point, oh sure, have your dad come and stay with us, there's plenty of room. So that was one of those kind of gaslighting situations. Well, while the wife was busy caring for the elderly parent and obviously had to stay there a lot to take care of him, that person was out, doing some of the similar things that you talk about. So, these are kind of almost like little premeditated things that go on there.
Well, I also think when you're a mother of a small child, and Danny was just a big child, he really was. And when I couldn't pay attention to him because I had 2 children that needed attention, that's when he'd really go off the rails. I mean, I'd have to say that's when things got really bad, is once we had kids, because I couldn't watch him 24 hours a day. And, that's sad, but I think that happens a lot in people's marriages. Once, you have children, people start, you're at a disadvantage, and especially in Hollywood, because there's a beautiful girl on every corner, doesn't care if a guy's married or not, and vice versa. There's a lot of men that don't care if women are married or whatever. But I think once you have children that you have to take care of, your focus has to become them, and then you're more susceptible to having something like that happen. And I think it's sad.
We've got a shot here, speaking of talking about children. We can zoom in on this. We got a shot we'll show you in a quick second. Right here, a photo of Gretchen Bonaduce as a young girl. Look at that, huh? Out on the front porch, looks like she's dancing, and this is a precursor to what she does now. She's, what's the name of your band? You do like an 80s tribute band?
Yeah, it's called the Fatal 80s, and we're actually playing in Laughlin, Nevada this weekend. So I'm just trying to get all my 80s gear in order and leave early in the morning to drive up there. But yeah, I have so much fun. I have amazing musicians that I get to play with, and we don't play a lot because it's really hard in LA to draw. There's so many things to do, and a lot of places are pay to play, where you have to buy like X amount of tickets and then you get paid after that. And for you to get 50 people to come in LA is pretty hard because there's just so much to do here. Sure. So we play a lot of casinos.
There you go. You talk in the book about being teased as a kid. I get the impression, did that stay with you into adulthood? Do you think that was something that maybe even now, certain things that you catch yourself saying and then you trace back to perhaps being teased as a young girl?
Well, it was weird because I wasn't like a popular girl at all. I mean, and it depends on how you measure popularity. I had lots of friends, but I wasn't a girl that guys wanted to go out with. But when we were in Germany, we were bullied, my brother and I, a lot. Like, we would get into so many fights, and I don't even know why. Like, kids are just mean, and I can't even imagine what it would be like to grow up in this time where you are bullied 24/7. At least when we were kids, we have bedtime, at school. Then we go home and everything was fine until we had to go back to school. Now with social media, it's 24 hours a day. It's got to be brutal.
There was something I forgot to mention before. You write in the book that your tombstone will read, quote, she was nice. So that's a,
Yes.
I like that. I like that. And she is. She's one of the nicest people I've ever encountered, believe me. So there is, there is no false facade here. What you're seeing is exactly what you're getting.
Well, I think my parents really did a good job raising me to try to be a good human being. That's what I aspire to be. Like, nobody will help anyone in this town except me. I will help everyone and bring everyone along with me. You know, even if I get this book made into a movie, I've got this person, you're coming as producer. You did hair and makeup for me, you're coming with me. You know, I really like to try to help people who have been loyal to me, you know, because it's not easy in this town. It's really, really hard to find people that will continue to help you when you're not a big name anymore. And so I've been so blessed to still have quite a bit of help.
You talk in the book about the first time that you theoretically laid eyes on Danny. You were a little girl and you were watching him on the TV screen. I know there's a story about how Tom Hanks saw Rita Wilson on an episode of the Brady Bunch and claims he fell in love with her even then. So but that you kind of brought you back to that, where you remember seeing that show as a kid. Little did you know that you would actually wind up marrying one of the Partridge family.
I know, it's crazy. I saw it one time, and my mother had gone to sleep, and she had like a pull-out couch, and my brother and I had snuck out to watch TV underneath the couch. And I remember trying to figure out how to pronounce his last name. So that's a vivid memory that I have from being a child. But I never really watched it because I lived in Germany a lot of the time when it was on. Plus, I was also, 6 years old. So it wasn't something, I was more interested in cartoons.
There you go. There you go. I love it. Oh, my goodness. You refer to yourself as stubborn. I will out tough you. Does that help you or did it help you as a wife, parent, and now as a businesswoman?
So much. There's a story in the book where when Danny and I first got married and I realized he was doing drugs, because I've never really done drugs. I smoked pot a few times when I was a kid, so I didn't even know what to look for. And then when I finally figured it out, I would do everything I could to stop him. So at night I would hide the keys in the dryer, so if he woke up, he wouldn't have access to a car. I literally would go and lay behind his car and say, if you want drugs bad enough, you're going to have to run over me because I'm not moving. And I would just out tough him. And that's how I got him into a good space, by just being tougher than he was. So it worked out.
Amazing. You talk in the book about in the early 90s, Danny was going through a little bit of a rough time from a business standpoint, and someone came to his rescue. The late David Cassidy, of course, they played brothers on the Partridge Family, and got Danny to go out on a tour with him as the opening comic act. Tell us a little bit, share a story about your time knowing David Cassidy.
He was just such a wonderful man. I feel so lucky that I got to know him. Danny had gotten into a lot of trouble in Phoenix. He'd been arrested, he lost his job. Again, like I was telling you, it was the ex-child star gone wrong era, so it was always the same panel on Oprah and Geraldo. It was Danny, Dana Plato, Todd Bridges, the girl that was on the Addams Family. I can't remember
Lisa Loring.
Yep, Lisa Loring.
Yeah.
So it was always the same 4 or 5 people. The kid that played Dennis the Menace.
Jay North.
Jay North, yeah. And so Danny needed a job, and luckily David was out on tour, so he thought it would be kind of a little bit of a Partridge Family reunion, so he hired Danny to do stand-up, which Danny did not do. He started doing stand-up because David was giving him a job to do it. And so he came to our rescue so many times and was just such a lovely man. And once we got divorced, I never really saw him again, because that's the way it works out. When you divorce people, everyone, unfortunately, has to take a side. And, he was a partridge and I was the ex-wife. So I never really got to see him again after that, but could not say any more nice things about the man. Beautiful, sweet, wonderful, talented, helped us out a lot during that period of time.
Gretchen Bonaduce joining us for the hour here on Studio 411. The book, Surviving Agent Orange, published by Rare Bird Books. For more information, rarebirdbooks.com. A little bit of a local story that I loved. I thought we'd discuss it briefly. While you were living in Philadelphia during one of his radio jobs, you took a ride up the coast not far from where we are, up in Mystic, Connecticut, and did a good deed. And then what else happened?
Well, when we moved to Philadelphia, Danny was on probation in Arizona, so they transferred to Pennsylvania. And we were not allowed to leave the state unless we had written permission. Well, it was Christmas Eve. Danny had just gotten a job. We had just been saving up money to buy our first house. We decided, let's just celebrate Christmas Eve. Let's go to Mystic, Connecticut, and just have like a beautiful little time to ourselves, because we were living with Danny's family at the time because we were totally broke, $50,000 in debt to an attorney. So we got in the car, took our dog, drove up to Mystic. We're sitting in this hotel room watching this story, and this terrible thing happened to some poor kid who was in a wheelchair, where these people just ran up to him, threw him on the ground, and stole his wheelchair. But we were just so upset about that. So we called the TV station and we asked them if it would be okay if they put us in touch with the family, because we wanted to buy the kid a wheelchair, because we felt so blessed and lucky that he, had come back from this terrible arrest in Arizona, and he had a job, and we're living with his family, and we were digging ourselves out of debt. And so we ended up getting the kid the wheelchair. And then the local news, because we had to call them to get the kids' info, did a story about it. So we went back to Philadelphia, went to check in, because he had to check in with his probation people. I can't remember if it was like once a week, once a month, whatever it was. And I'm sitting there waiting for him, and some guy walks by me, and he's like, "Lady, they just arrested your husband." I'm like, "Huh? No, they didn't." He goes, "No, they did." So I'm trying to find someone. I go, "Hey, what's going on here?" So they take me to the back of the room, and I guess they had the story from the newspaper, and they knew we had left town without permission, so they had arrested Danny for violating his probation.
Oh my God! There's another. That's another 24-minute or 22-minute comedy episode. You can't. His own dad, Joe, couldn't make up stuff like that on Dick Van Dyke. I mean, it really is. So that's that, and the other one, which we don't have time to get into. The book will tell it all. Is the one with the camping episode? That was another. It's just loaded with some great stories. Not all of them are like drug fueled or whatever induced, but I mean just some comedy.
I tried to be fair. I tried to write as many nice things, because there were a lot of nice things. You can't stay married to somebody for 18 years and not have a lot of great. What it was a lot of great and a lot of terrible. There was very little in between.
In between. Robin Quivers, Howard Stern's longtime sidekick, once referred to you as a mental patient. Why do you think Robin said that? Why would she say something about someone so sweet?
Well, she didn't know me, and I think she was just going off the fact that we got married so quickly, and that, I must be a mental patient to marry Danny. And but you know what? Howard was always so kind to me, so I didn't really mind. She didn't like me and wanted to call me a mental patient. Good, fine.
Because I got the impression that he was quite popular with Howard. Am I mistaken, or did he not do Howard shows quite a few times? Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was one of the only people. Now, I'm saying this because Danny told me this, but usually if Danny told me something, it probably wasn't true. But
Okay.
He did tell me he was the only person that ever was able to sit in for Howard when he was on vacation. Don't know if that's true, but I definitely know Howard liked him and had him on all the time.
In the book, you talk about your mom, who you lost at the young age of 26. You were about 7. Tell me, how did and does it still impact you to this day?
I think it just really defines you when you're a child and you lose a parent really young. I also think that explains a lot of why I hung in there again as long as I did. I think you're terrified of losing things when you lose a parent really young. And it was a very bizarre accident. I still don't really even know exactly what happened. I don't think anybody does. But she was pregnant. She had just had a baby. We were living in Germany. She somehow fell out of the hospital window like a week after my little sister was born. And nobody really knows how or why. I know they stopped letting American patients in the hospital at the time because of the, language barrier. I don't think anybody spoke English there. So, yeah, so that was a terrible thing. And, I feel even worse for my little sister because she never really got to grow up with her or know her. And so that was a bad, sad situation. But it is what it is. It's life. There's great things and there's terrible things. And maybe she's somehow up there guiding me, and I have the life she always wanted. She wanted to travel all over the world, and I ended up being able to do that. So I don't know.
Absolutely. Gretchen Bonaduce, surviving Agent Orange, joining us for the hour on Studio 411. A quote from one of her dear friends. I love the book, could not put it down. Gretchen Bonaduce is one of the coolest chicks I know, a terrific mother and an even better friend. Her life has been fascinating and crazy at the same time. There are many life lessons in her story, for sure. To top it off, it is written in a conversational and reliable way. Jackie Callan, author of Hit Me With Your Best Shot and Between the Ropes. Jackie is also, I believe she's considered the woman of boxing. First woman of boxing.
Yeah, she's like the first credible woman that because it's so male oriented, that whole boxing group of people. And she was like the first one that was credible, that they actually, people wanted to sign with her. She had heavyweights and welterweights and all kinds of people. She's kind of my mentor. I love her. And she's written a couple books. I don't know if you've ever had her on, but they also did a movie about her called Against the Ropes. And Meg Ryan played her in the movie. And she's just such a kick-ass lady. I love her. She's awesome.
You talk in the book, and it goes back to something we talked about early. I think we've solved the mystery if you do a movie where you kind of bring it full circle to today. In the book, you write that your twin is Kara Sedgwick.
Yes. Who knew?
Who is married to Kevin Bacon. So we have a little bit of, the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Kevin seems to weave and bob in everyone's life, and there you go. So
I guess so.
Yeah.
I've never heard that one. I hear Priscilla Presley a lot, but here Kara Sedgwick was the new one. But that was in Taiwan, so they thought I was Kara Sedgwick, and that Danny had run away with Kevin Bacon's wife to have a secret little tryst there.
There you go. Now, in radio, as you talked, there are a lot of changes. You guys went from Chicago to Detroit, then hit the big time in New York. Unfortunately, all of those, for varying reasons, format changes, contracts come and go. You guys had your children, a boy and a girl, if I'm not mistaken, and then eventually wind up going to Los Angeles. You write in the book that it kind of dawned on you, my God, Los Angeles, that's the worst possible place we could possibly go. You would have been happy staying in New York.
I wanted to stay in New York so bad. I did not want to come here. I was not happy when he said we had to move here. But on the other side of the coin, he kind of feels like he's from here, even though he is from Pennsylvania. But he grew up here. I think he moved here when he was 4 or 5. So he considers LA his home. So I didn't want to go, but he was so happy to come back. So, of course I had to support that.
And as you talk about how, and I fully agree, life happens whether we want it to or not. And sometimes the places we go, even though we look at it as, maybe not the best, defines, what happens to us. And you talk about going to LA. Obviously there you started to get work, not only managing Danny's career, but then you started to get some work behind the scenes with a few different shows.
Right.
He got the gig doing was a show with Dick Clark. Help me out. It was called The Other Side, I believe.
The Other Half.
The Other Half, yeah, kind of a male The View type show, and that was good. But behind the scenes, things were really breaking down at that point, correct?
Right. That was the first season. Everything was great, and he was so excited because we had just moved back here. He was on the #1 radio show. He just got that show with Dick Clark, Mario Lopez, Dr. Jan Adams was on that show, who coincidentally was the doctor that operated on Kanye's mom when she passed away. That was Dr. Jan Adams, and I think that was it. The first season, and then the second season was when things started really falling apart, when he was having this affair and moved a girl down the street from us, and I had no idea because he was gone so much anyway. He was doing morning radio, and they were taping 3 shows a day, several days a week, and he was doing voiceover work, and then he had to be gone on the weekends, because when you're on TV, you have to go wherever, to meet the station managers and do appearances. So yeah, that's kind of when things really fell apart to the point where I really had to face it and confront it, and yeah, that was that. And how I found it, like I said, was texting and phone calls. So that's how I caught it.
And at one point, I mean, obviously, I should say years later, I don't know if it was this particular, you refer to as a 9021 something or other.
9021 Hope.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah.
Not to say her name at all. Yeah. But that's one of my favorite stories in the book too. Is when I found out, and I was so mad that I got Danny's phone, and I found her phone number, and I programmed Gloria Allred's number as her number. So every time he tried to call her, it would call Gloria Allred's office just to remind him, dude, you're about to get divorced here.
The Gloria Allred, who was the one that was involved with the Bill Cosby prosecutor. Yeah, she's quite a busy attorney, to say the least. Before I forget, share a little bit the lovely story, your Princess Diana story. I thought that was nice.
You know what? That is the highlight of my life. I have just adored Princess Diana from day one. And she ended up coming to Chicago. And one of our friends was friends with the catering manager at the Drake Hotel, which is where she stayed. And so they were able to sneak me in because they knew, what door she was going to come out. And they just knew everywhere because it was super secure, high security. And so the catering manager knew the door that she was going to come out that day to go to this event. So they placed me in front of the door and then put a kid in front of me with flowers because they knew that she would come over in that direction. And I just was so lucky to have contact with her. And it just is a highlight of my life for sure that I got to meet her.
So the one person, if you ask Gretchen, like if she would be a groupie of, would be the late Princess Diana for sure.
For sure. Yeah. I love Meghan Markle. Now I want to stalk her. She's so great.
Interesting. Yes, she's a busy young lady, to say the least, nowadays. You stated that when you were in New York that you were living the kind of Sex and the City lifestyle that became so part of that show that came about a little later on in the timeline. But that was a good place for you guys to raise your daughter, and then a little later on your son came along. So it was good stuff. You like that better than L.A., I take it?
Oh, I would go back there in a second, but I'm kind of ready for a quiet life now. So I just put a bid on a place in Arizona. So my house hits the market. It's actually been a pocket listing, but it's going to go out in the next couple of days, and hopefully it'll sell fast. Because it just sounds amazing to me to actually drive into a parking spot and not pay for it. You can't find that in LA.
No. Or in New York, trust me, I was just there a few months ago. In New York now, even worse than LA, you don't even want to have a car. So now the next time we go, it's going to be in a situation where it's going to be subway and or train to get in there, because there's no way to get around in Los Angeles or in New York City by car. You're liable to hit somebody and then you'll be the one being blamed for it. So for sure. Gretchen Bonaduce.
I literally go 5 miles sometimes, and it'll take me 35 minutes to go 5 miles. It's crazy.
Yeah, for sure. Gretchen Bonaduce joining us for the hour, the remaining moments we have on Studio 411. The book Surviving Agent Orange, published by Rare Bird Books. For more information, rarebirdbooks.com. We talked earlier about Danny being on the show The Other Half. Share a quick story that comes to your mind about one of his co-hosts there, the legendary Dick Clark. It's amazing to me the number of guests that we have had on this program that seems to always intertwine with the legendary Mr. Clark, and you're certainly in there as well.
What a lovely, lovely man. Just such a great guy. One of my favorite memories of him, right when the TV show started, Dick had us over to his house, Dick and Carrie, his wife, and they wanted to just have a nice dinner. So they invited the cast and their wives, and we went over to his place in Malibu. And I actually had been there before, but I didn't want to say because I wasn't supposed to be there. His son had invited us over for a party when Dick was out of town. So I didn't want to go, hey, I've been here before. So I decided to keep that under my hat. But we had the best dinner party, and he was so cute because he loved Madonna's song Vogue. So he just put it on repeat. So all night long we were just listening to Vogue over and over and over.
That was the hit of the week. He thought he was still doing American Bandstand, I think, at that point.
Yeah. It was so cute. And it was right after 9/11, which was the reason I know that date. I mean, on top of it being 9/11 and what happened, that was the date their show was supposed to debut, was September 11th, 2001. So obviously that didn't happen. Nobody was watching TV. It was bad for all shows because all people want to do was watch the news.
Oh, news channels for sure.
Yeah. And so I was sitting next to him, and he was going to go to New York to do the New Year's Eve show, New Year's Reckoning. And I said, well, are you going to go? And he was really quiet for a second. He goes, I'm going. And he goes, I feel like if America thinks it's safe enough for Dick Clark to go, they'll still go. So I feel like it's my duty to go to New York. And he's like, I'm terrified, but I'm going. And he did.
Yeah, for sure. I was just talking recently with another guest who had been a gossip columnist for many years with one of the major publications. And she just, couldn't say anything bad about Dick Clark. The only knock you ever heard about him, and it really wasn't a knock when the marbles were all in your court, was that he was very demanding when it came to the production of his shows, and he wanted things done a certain way. And again, when you're paying for something, you damn well have a right to expect what you want, and for that, nobody can criticize him. But yeah, marvelous person. I wish I could have gotten. So I kind of lived through all you people that had a chance to meet the great America's youngest teenagers, they used to call them.
I've been so lucky. I've met some great people, Oprah and Bill Donahue, and I mean the list is on and on and on. I've just been that's the way I look at my life. I'm so lucky, that I had the experience being married to Danny and getting two beautiful children out of the whole thing and meeting great people and traveling the world. Like, I don't look at, myself or my life as, oh, poor me, I was cheated on and blah, blah. I just don't look at things like that.
No, you were a survivor, and you bounced back, and very resilient for sure. Last couple of moments we have after your divorce, another cute story in the book. Danny's divorce attorney asked you out. I thought that was pretty funny.
Did I.
That's another elongate that into a sitcom episode. I'm telling you right now, or included in the movie. I think it's very very comical at all. 2008, you guys decided to divorce,
right.
And you became more involved with a next chapter in your life, not only a new relationship within a short amount of time, but more importantly with your musical side of yourself. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I always loved to produce shows, and after we did Breaking Bonaduce, it turned out I had a real knack for doing that. The second show we sold to VH1 was called I Know My Kid's the Next Child Star. And that's where the name of my book comes from, actually, because one of the titles we threw out was Surviving Agent Orange. And my assistant and I just thought that was so funny that it became our code name for Danny. So it was like Agent Orange will be texting each other, is driving up the driveway. Agent Orange is going to his meeting. So that's where the name of the book comes from. And so I enjoyed doing that. And then I ended up winning a TV show that I also produced on. And I've had many, many shows optioned by different production companies. It's really hard to get things on right now, though. So I've kind of backed off on it now because, as I said, I'm kind of tired of being here and just want to have a nice, quiet life. Wouldn't turn it down, though. Like if Housewives calls because the pay is so well, I'm on it.
There you go. We've got a shot here. Help me out here. The young lady who was a founding member of the Runaways, a good friend of yours.
Yeah, that's Cherie Curry. She was the lead singer and a very dear friend of mine. And again, another blessing in my life. I just have been able to be friends with the most wonderful people, and she's one of my closest friends. She's wonderful.
Absolutely. Good musician and singer to boot, I'll tell you. That's very good. Now, let's see some quotes of things you've learned. Let me, in just in a quick moment that we have here left. Oh, my goodness. I love to, you mentioned Phil Donahue. That was when television, you could watch Donahue and you actually had to listen to what people had to say. It wasn't like this, frantic pace that we had now. It was 1 hour, kind of like this show, only not as quiet. But he was great. I loved Phil Donahue.
Yeah, I think people were more polite. I think people have just turned really into bullying and being rude and name calling, and yeah, I don't think it's a good thing. I don't.
Things I've learned in my 39 years of living. Don't sweat the small stuff. I've had too many gigantic things to sweat over, so the small stuff never got to me. That's great. And above all, for God's sakes, just have fun and make the most of your life. It's not just a saying. You really only do live once. So there you go. There you go. You are something else. I'm still trying to think of somebody to play Danny in the movie.
Me too.
Who was the one? Who was the one? The one that played the Joker in Batman? Was that River Phoenix, or was that Joaquin
no,
Phoenix?
He passed away though. Who you're talking
about?
Yeah,
but I'm just saying.
The Australian guy.
Oh, Heath Ledger. Yeah, but see that kind of guy, or a shorter Christian Bale, someone that could really, embrace that character of Danny.
Right. And that nutty, crazy guy. I used to think Eric Stoltz, but now I don't know. He might. No, we need people that can play 20. Well, if we go back to Danny, I'm sure in flashbacks any kid could do it. But me, we got married when I was 25 to now I'm 53. So it's got to be someone that can play younger. Oh, Drew Barrymore, maybe. She's kind of cute and charming, and I don't know. She's always good in everything.
There you go. There you go. All right. Well, so much more. I could do another hour, and we certainly will try to get Gretchen back on. And not once did I call her Gretchen Carlson. So see, I had a bet. No dollar bills lost on this bet. I just had that name in my head. I couldn't get rid of it. Gretchen Bonaduce, Surviving Agent Orange and Other Things I Learned from Being Thrown Under the Partridge Family Bus. It's a marvelous book produced and written by Gretchen. Rare Bird Books. For more information, rarebirdbooks.com. We thank you so much for joining us, and please, we hope to have you back on again.
Thank you so much, Larry. I had a great time. Call me anytime.
Very good. Very good. Hang on one second, and we thank you for joining us here on this episode of Studio 411. Larry DeSilva is my name, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. Take care.